We're joined by another one of our team members who's Kevin. I've known Kevin for many years, and Kevin's been very influential in the photo industry. He's worked on some cool software products of the years, including help make tools like Nik software. And Kevin is also pretty passionate about black and white photography, I believe. Kevin, you're going to share some of your tips with it today, right? You're going to share us. Yep, you got a nice black and white over your
Yes.
shoulder, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. It's all over the place here. Yeah, I love black and white. It's just a great way to see the world differently and to really direct viewers' eyes right where you need them.
Absolutely. And earlier
Love it.
today, we shared a link for some black and white LUTs that are
Oh,
brand
good.
new. I'm going to put that into the chat pod right now. And
Excellent.
Kevin's going to show his recipes, and then I'll show you an alternate recipe as we're working. But let me put this into the chat pod. So I'll just drop that in there for you. And these are free to use. There are instructions in them. So make sure when you unzip it, you take a look at it. These are used with the Mood tool. And so you guys can click that link to download them. These are some custom black and white recipes of mine that I'm sharing with you. So we'll tackle the rest of your questions. But Kevin, I know people love to see the software. Why don't you jump in and show us some cool things?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Un momento. Okay, and yeah, okay. So we're doing well here. Can you guys see my Luminar catalog here?
Yep, we see pictures and we see you. That's the best of both
Okay.
worlds.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, so I wanted to put together a wide range of shots to show you folks. There's very basic ways to do black and white in Luminar AI, as well as kind of diving into the details and really mixing things up a little bit. I'm going to start really simple, but with a picture I took in. This is in Yellowstone, so many years ago. I can't even count, but I love the picture. And when I go to this picture, I think, okay, well, let's just do this very simply. Let's just try a template. Obviously, for this photo takes a quick look at some of the templates. It suggests some things. I really like this Noirscape. I've even got it favorited here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that, and instantly it transforms what was a kind of a busy color shot into something that's just a little bit more stark. Now, there's one thing I do want to do here, and that is I'm going to have to move my screen here down a little bit. So I'm going to go to the edit here, and what I want to do is I want to use composition AI to sort of minimize the foreground here. I feel like the green grass in the front there is competing a little bit with the aspens. And so I could click composition AI. Let's go ahead and do that and see what that does. But I know in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I really want to just minimize this. Composition AI took a look at that and kind of gave me a little bit tighter crop. And really what I want to do is bop this up like this. And then I'm just going to come in. Now, right now, my ratio is original. So what I need to do is I need to go to more of a freehand look. And I kind of like that one a little bit better. So let's let that take charge there. And then we'll go from there. So that's a quick look at composition AI. I might need to go back to this template here and reapply it. No, there it was just catching up a little bit. So that's one quick thing. Let's go in and take a look at one of our images. This is one I took out east of San Diego to a place called Little Artist Community near the Salton Sea. And I kind of like this shot. Rather than trying a template, though, I'm going to go right into the edit module. And we're going to just kind of look at this a little bit. So I like this shot. I am going to use composition AI one more time on this one, just to see what it does. And it does do a nice tight crop there, which is cool. I'm going to come in here and just move it a little bit because I don't want his head cut off in this particular composition. And now let's use enhance. Let's use the accent AI to bring out some of the details and tones in the image. And what I try to do usually in my recipes is is get the image as nice as I can in color, and then convert to black and white. This thing with all these little machine parts in here that you see, it screams structure to me. I want a little bit more detail in there before I convert it. And so you can see as I crank in the structure, you're seeing some of the edge detail pop in. So let's do a quick before and after. So just with Accent AI and little structure, to me it looks a lot better. There's a lot more contrast in there. And
That's
now I
very
might just
cool.
go,
And a lot of
yeah,
people skip that step, Kevin, which is bring the color nice and rich before you remove it, because that actually increases the dynamic range of the image.
that's that's a way to articulate that for me. Yeah, I sometimes I'm kind of feeling my way through this, but Rich, you've got a nice way of putting that. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this to black and white. And again, this is just a simple image. And as you can see, it's pretty cool there. Now, what I might do is I actually want to see if I can introduce a little bit more black and white in here. So you'll see it's kind of getting some of those blacks and some of those darker colors are starting to come out. And I like that one a lot better. Let me go ahead and just show you the before and the after here. And I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to get into some toning in a little bit, but actually I kind of like where that's ended up. What do you think, Rich?
I think that's looking really
That's
solid. I like that a lot. I would say if you want to go back to it for 1 second, Kevin,
oh sure.
there's one thing I love, and this is a tool that not enough people use. Go to super contrast on a black
I
and
knew
white.
you were going to go there.
Yeah, it's one of my
Pop right down
favorites,
here.
and it's down there in the professional section. Some people are afraid because it has the word professional attached. Professional means good enough that even the pros love it. So, what's nice is, and then use the balance on that. So move the balance slider on shadows and contrast. So put a little more contrast in your shadows, and then now move that middle slider, and you're changing where it's applied. And you see how it's just a great way to
Oh yeah.
target the shadows to make them more contrasty. And it's interesting because people think they don't use the balance sliders, and the balance sliders is kind of like tilting the teeter-totter of where you're emphasizing the highlights and the shadows. And it's just a nice way to pop that.
That looks dramatically better than I had it, Rich. And
Super contrast
actually,
is awesome.
I was going to use super contrast a little bit later, but I hadn't actually tried it on this image. And boy, this is a great candidate for it.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
for showing me that.
And before you leave that image, Kevin, there was a question about vignettes. I don't think you had a
Oh,
vignette on
okay.
this image, but would you mind adding one so we can answer the question?
Yeah, not at all. So vignettes are a great way to finish the image. Uh, I've got vignettes on my list here, but vignettes are a great way, as I said, to direct people's attention. Normally, vignettes are sort of right in the center. Luminar AI has a great tool here called Choose Subject. So I'm gonna go right up to his face. And oftentimes what I like to do is drag the slider down quite a bit, just so I can see where the emphasis is, and I can also resize how I like. Under the advanced settings tab, this is where it gets fun, where you get to do things like feather it. You can see that edge getting a lot softer. So I tend to like to make that really, really soft, so it's a gentle transition into the center of the image.
Yeah, and before you leave that one, Kevin, someone was asking, well, my vignette's white. Can you just flop that amount slider to a positive, the top one? So
Sure,
this
sure.
this tool is versatile. Like if you want to go to white at the edges, you
Yeah.
can do that as well. So a lot of people are like, wait a minute, why is my vignette white? It's because you were moving it to the right, which is a brighter vignette, and the left is a darker vignette. We have a really cool vignette tool that does things that not everyone else's vignette does. That inner light that Kevin mentioned is great because that lets you balance it out.
Yeah, I'm just sliding that back and forth now. His face is a little bit bright right now anyway, so I'm not going to apply a lot of inner light. The other thing I might mention is that the white vignette works really well with kind of a vintage tone look too. So if you tend to get into like a sepia tone or something like that, that white works really, really well for those kind of images. Okay,
Very
so I
cool.
thought I'd move on to a couple of other examples. I wanted to try a few different styles for this. Let's go ahead and try a little street style. Black and white is often used to kind of provide some grit or drama. I also was challenging myself with an assignment recently to try to mimic a little bit more of the Vivian Maier style. She was a photographer, back in the gosh, I think, what do you think, the 40s and 50s, Rich? But she had a great little street style, and so I'm going to jump right in. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to templates, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to choose favorites. And I'm just going to try Abbey Street here. And that's a nice, clean black and white. And I love this picture because the kid right here is looking directly at me. I'm sitting in a coffee bar on a table right outside this coffee bar in Encinitas, California. And I really like the way this is composed. Mom's looking at her phone, kid's knocked out. The other kid is totally alert. When I come over to the edit module, the first thing I'm going to work on here is I want to use composition AI, but this time I want to use it in a one-to-one mode here. So I'm going to kind of slide it off. I like how the sign is here, and I like the way that one-to-one ratio works. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that down, and now start working with this a little bit more. As Rich said, super contrast is a great tool. I'm just gonna check a couple of settings here to see how the template was applied to the image and what tools it used. So you can see as we look down the tool list here, anything with a little dot next to it has been applied with the template. I'm going to go ahead here, and looks like super contrast is already in, but following Rich's lead, I'm going to crank up that shadow contrast a little more and kind of move the balance there. And that's looking pretty cool. So let's go here. There's the before, nice enough shot in color, but really a lot more interesting in black and white, in my opinion. I don't think anybody needs any skin retouching in this photo. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this thing off and I kind of want people to look right in the center there. And again, I'm just going to dial this down and not do much more there. Okay.
That's very cool. Kevin, would you mind if I showed a LUT workflow really quick, and then we'll come back to another image with you?
Oh, I'd love that. Let's go.
Sure. So a lot of folks...
I'm going to stop my share.
Yep, no problem. A lot of folks aren't familiar with using lookup tables, and LUTs allow you to load in color recipes. So you're not seeing my Zoom interface, right? You're just seeing Skylum, the Luminar application? Perfect. Okay,
that's
I had
right.
a problem with that earlier today. Just double checking. So we've got a nice bridal session here from photographer Jessica Kubasi, and I want to do a nice black and white look, a real classic black and white look. I'm going to use this as my reference image because it has skin tones, flowers, other things about it. Now, these are not all the selects. I'm just going to quickly apply it to the entire shoot and then evaluate which ones we like after we've developed. Sometimes it's nice to evaluate the images if you're going to be delivering black and white in black and white. So what I generally do before I do any black and white conversion is I'll use accent to get the right dynamic range, and I'll put some structure in with AI. This maximizes that. This looks pretty easily there. Then what I'll do is go down to the mood tool for color and load custom LUTs. So I posted a download link to some black and white LUTs that you guys are able to pull down and use. These are lookup tables. And in here, there's a whole bunch of them. Now, mine show visual thumbnails because I have a LUT editor loaded in my system. That's why I'm seeing them. This is tied to the operating system. You might not see cool thumbnails like this, but I like having this so I can see them and browse. And I see different options here depending upon the image. So for example, there's some nice ones here with contrast. There's some ones specifically designed for portraits. And when I click open, the LUT is applied. Take that up to 100%, and then you could adjust the contrast of the LUT and a little bit of the saturation, which is going to affect usually the skin tone region. You want to try a different LUT? You can go in, find another one, and just load it and dial it in. Now what's cool about this is you could use the color tool to manipulate the areas. So if I want to go to luminance here, I could adjust the oranges there to affect her skin tones and a little bit of the reds as well. I could use the yellow here to affect the wall and the slider. And you could even add saturation to that area there, and you see that that too also affects it. So you could use those HSL sliders to fine tune. Then what I would do to make this a little more believable is not just add a vignette, but one of the cool things is that recently we released a texture pack. Kevin actually helped put this pack together and picked out some of the textures that went in, and we built it, and you can load this. We'll put that back into the chat link as well. But this texture pack is called the Paper Texture Kit, and in it there are some PNG files. And so you'll find in here different types of textures, and these are photographic paper textures. So here's a nice mixed media texture. And this is a PNG, so we now support transparency in our PNGs. So you can adjust the opacity of that to taste, as well as still finesse it using blending modes if you want to make that a little more subtle. So now look at how it has that aged feel. Plus, to make this a little sexier, one of my favorites is to use Mystical and/or Glow. Mystical gets nice, rich, dark shadows. Glow, using the Orton effect, gives you nice, soft shadows that get brighter. So use Mystical when you want the glow to get darker, and use Orton when you want the glow to get lighter. So now we've got this cool vintage feeling with a little bit of paper and the vignette and the texture. Well, as we've said many a time, templates are your friend, especially when they're your templates. So click and save that as a template. And I'm going to call that, there it is, and I can go into my templates area. You'll see we've added a direct shortcut now to make it easier to my templates. And I'm just going to call this vintage black and white. So there it is. And let's just rename that. And we'll call that vintage black and white. And now that's ready to use. So I can go back to my catalog, select everything from this entire shoot. There's, a whole bunch of photos, and we'll just synchronize. And now I can review the rest of those images with the black and white vintage recipe on them and decide which one's working. So, it's going to start going through and syncing all of those. Now, this one's a pretty intense template because it has blending modes and textures and everything else. But you see how it's batch processing those and making the preview, so it's updating. And so when you are using layered textures, it does make it more robust, especially with the blending modes in there. But look, they're just plowing right through and updating. And then I could jump into each one of those and tweak. But I like to do this sometimes before I make my selects because the images often look very different in black and white than they do in color. Don't let a bad color image dissuade you away from using a photo. Or you might go, oh, that looks a little soft. Well, with color photography, yeah, but with a vintage black and white, you may actually like some of those imperfections coming through. But look how fast that was, to be able to do that whole set. And then when you click, like Vanelli mentioned before, you'll see it loading in. I'm not sure, maybe I didn't do this one. I bet I didn't. So let me just, with that one selected, we'll go right into our templates. Oh, there it is. It just took a second to apply.
Oh, yeah.
And you could see that look. And I love those textures, Kevin. I'm so glad you had us put those all together. They just give it such a nice feeling to the black and white.
Well, and plus with the soft light blending mode and the ping transparency, that's great. That's a terrific workflow, Rich. And I hadn't thought, to be honest with you, I hadn't thought about doing my edits first before the culling step. That's a real mind bender. Thank you.
Well, because this is so non-destructive, you could do that. Because now if you decided, oh, I loved this image, and I want to get out of the way, Kevin, but I just want to tie back two things we saw earlier. We talked about how amazing the iris tools are under eyes here. Even in the black and white, look as we add the iris flare and as we eye enhance, look at those eyes pop through the veil. It's just amazing. And we could improve the eyebrows just a little thicker. I love how that just helps sell this image. And that's really bringing it to life. And then super contrast. I think you're all going to walk away knowing today that that's an awesome way to finesse those highlights. Like, look at how that veil now just pops. And let's get a little bit more richness there in our shadows. And now you're just pulled into this photo. Those eyes just sell it. I mean, Jessica is such a great photographer, but I just love how this image works in black and white.
You got to do the before and after, man. We
Sure.
got to see it. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful.
And everything's non-destructive. That's the power of Luminar. So when you come back, you can work with it. Now, a couple of you are like, well, I use it as a Lightroom plugin. Lightroom doesn't let plugins be non-destructive, but we'll show a way of doing that later with Photoshop Smart Objects so you can keep it non-destructive if you are using it as a plugin. All right, Kevin, let's see another one of your examples. I'm enjoying your photos here.
That's great. And it's so fast to do that stuff too. I'm just blown away by it. Hey, I want to do one quick like landscape. I had a great trip out to Death Valley a couple of weeks ago, and one of my goals was to shoot the Badwater Basin. This, it was about a mile out to walk to a pristine area, but I thought that this might be a good one to kind of work on with our edit panel and Luminar AI. So I'm going to come up here. I don't mind the composition at all, but I'm going to go straight to accent and see what it can do. And because we have such a beautiful sky there, I'm going to use Sky Enhancer. So you can see how it deepens and enriches that sky there. Because we have these great crystals here, ordinarily I'd go to structure, but I'm going to go straight to details. And I really want to pull out some of the small details in the little salt structure there. So you can see it getting a little bit crunchier there, which is kind of what I want for this image. Let me do a quick before and after. Look at how that, in just a couple of seconds, that has gone from what looked like a pretty soft image, maybe low contrast, something that's a little crunchier. That might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to dial that back because we will be using super contrast later. So I don't want to add too much to this yet. So I really like the way that's heading. Let's go.
I like that, Kevin. The depth on the foreground there is really cool. You can just feel that texture of the sand. Is that salt? What is that?
It is. They're salt crystals. Yeah, this entire basin is miles and miles. And actually, thanks for the jog there. It looks a little bit crooked and it's not intentional. So I'm going to use the Composition AI perspective tool to kind of try to straighten that out. And I might do it just a little bit more. I love the little grid lines on there. And so now we've got something that's a little straighter, for us to kind of take forward here. So it's going to apply that. And Rich, I know you've got a lot of background in this kind of stuff. I would ordinarily go straight into black and white, but what do you think? Is there anything else you do before we roll there?
Dramatic can be fun. So the dramatic down there under creative, dramatic is also a lot of fun because it's another way of maximizing the dynamic range. But if you open up the brightness and saturation under the advanced controls, it doesn't have to desaturate. So just double click that. Actually, put it back, Kevin, for a second, because people don't know this. If you double click on a slider, it resets. So if you just double click on the saturation dot, so bring dramatic back up and then just double click on saturation and it will set it back to 0. Yep, or the dot itself, I think. But that way it doesn't lose any value. And so you could set that to 0 if you want, so it's not losing color. Sometimes I even push that. So go ahead and push that more saturated with drama, because now do your black and white conversion. You've got more range. The other one that you might play with before your conversion is down under professional, and go down to color harmony and add a little bit of color contrast.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so now you got a really rich, gritty image. That's going to make a sexy black and white.
Well, let's get right to it. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, that's a good start. Now I want to, when I'm looking at this, I'd kind of like to see the sky, pop a little more. So one way to do that, I think, is to saturate the blue.
You could, or just work with the luminance slider. Stay on luminance and just pull the blue down. So you pull the blue left or right.
Yeah, there you go.
And a little cyan, because skies are not pure blue except in Crayola color boxes.
That's right. The 64 packs, right, with the sharpener on
Periwinkle. Where's the periwinkle slider?
There we go. Look at that. Nice low contrast, but interesting. And look at that. Wow.
And Kevin, people, I don't want to say overuse our sky replacement feature, right? If you love it, we love it. But you've got a great sky in this image, Kevin. Pop it with go back up to enhance and bring out the sky enhancer. Because that's why it's there. Like, you know, you already had a lot of it, but in that black and white image, push it hard. Like, look at that. That's awesome. Great texture up there.
Almost looks like a storm is coming through.
Yeah, it's cool.
No, that's nice. I really like that a lot. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, and since we're going for grit, go for it all the way. Put some structure in there, man.
There we go.
Yeah, we're going to lean into this one. It's going to feel like a stark desert. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and details enhancer there, and that texture is going to bring all that out.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Well, that's a good little shot. I might have to send something off to my friends at Bay Photo, and
I just made Kevin make a new print for his house, but honey, I had to do it. That was part of my job.
That's going to cost me some money. I had to do it. It's for my job. Well, let's go back to the catalog here. I wouldn't mind doing one more for you guys, if you're.
Yeah, we got time, and then up next we're going to be hearing from Elia Liccardi.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I'd love to stick around there. So I can do a selective color, or I can do kind of a vintage toning shot. What do you think? What do you think would be more interesting?
We'll let people in the chat really vote quickly.
Okay,
So selective color or vintage toning. What would you guys like to see? Selective color is where you have a spot color, and vintage is going to be more of a little bit. So we got...
Okay, we're even up.
It's pretty much even.
I'll work real fast then.
All right. You do selective color or whichever one you got loaded, and I'll do the other one a little later, Kevin.
Okay.
So it's a pretty even split.
Yeah.
Welcome to our world. Like where you think everyone agrees, it never happens.
No, that's good. That's good. I like it. So I'm just going to use accent just a little bit here because I don't want to really brighten this up. I want to keep it a little darker. I found this shot out east of San Diego in one of the little communities. This was a vintage, thrift kind of store. I'll bring up some structure a little bit. Just saw this lone piano sitting out in the, sitting outside. I'm just going to get a few more details in there. So nothing crazy here. What I'd like to do now, though, is go straight into black and white. Let's go ahead and convert it. And you can see that, remember these leaves are green here, right? So selective color is so easy. If you've got a dedicated color there, you can just kind of go in there and pull that green out, and you can see those leaves starting to pop off of there. So that's kind of fun. And just a simple, quick image, just like that. Nothing more to do there. There's your selective color. Any other suggestions on this one, Rich?
Give me 1 second, Kevin. I'm just putting the link to the paper texture kit, but actually
good. Okay.
Adding a texture in might go a long way if you have any of those handy with the local masking tool.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Come over here. We'll go texture overlay.
And these are just on your hard drive, folks. So you don't have to install these anywhere. You just put it someplace where you could find it. So, you might have it in your pictures folder or your desktop where people store things. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, give me half a second to pick up these textures, and there's that paper texture kit. So this is what you're loading into the chat.
Yep, I just put it into the chat.
This is a great bunch of stuff here. So
and for those of you watching on YouTube, if you come on over to our AI Insiders community at insiders.skylum.com, you can find that texture kit posted in there for free download to all of our folks.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I picked a little bit too subtle one there. Let's try that mixed media one again.
Yep. Okay. Nice.
And yeah.
Give it a second. Okay. Yep, there it is. Go. These are high quality textures, so that's why they take a while to load, because it's a really high res print resolution texture. So don't be surprised when you load them if they take a second. It's got to uncompact it. So now he could dial that in with the opacity and really control it, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't
have quite the Kevin, how can you flip it or rotate it?
Yeah, we can use these buttons here, right. If you've got a really strong pattern in your texture, it's pretty easy to flip it horizontally and vertically. Using these, I think it would probably be better if I had the opacity up, and you could see that. You can see the texture going in there. So you might want to play with the interplay of elements in your image here. along with the patterns and the texture. And just
Yeah.
for
And
grins and
before you
giggles.
leave this, Kevin, I want to show one trick. Leave it back on for a second before you blend it. That's fine, overlay. Sometimes people say, well, after I've done this, how could I redevelop the photo? I'm going to show you a little trick. Go up to Add for local masking and add a basic adjustment.
Okay, learning as we go.
Now, by
Love it.
default, this doesn't apply anywhere. Click on those three dots next to the paint mask and tell it to fill. Now you have another basic adjustment. So you can go ahead and crank up structure, pull down contrast, play with shadows and highlights. And so you could redevelop the file here. Yep. So if it's not moving, did it change?
Yeah, it changed a little bit. Yep.
Yep. So, and go ahead and pull down the exposure so they could really see that, like with the main exposure slider. So that's giving you like a global light tool that you could apply to refine things after you've built everything. So it's giving you like another pass.
Yeah, that's great. And you can stack these up, right? If you want to keep going, you can have up to 10 of these local masks, right?
Yep. Yep. You could have multiple ones and you can brush and do other cool things.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
I love it.
So,
I love
Christine,
it. I did want to
texture kit. I've pasted the link directly into the chat pod, but I'll help you find it later on Insiders, but there's a direct link for you.